Welcome to Ladybird Readers. If you have enjoyed looking and listening to my books, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. Thank you. The Discontented Pony, a Ladybird book. First published in 1951. The Discontented Pony. Once upon a time there was a pony called Merrylegs. He was a handsome little fellow, with a nose as soft as velvet and a brown coat that shone like polished chestnut. He lived on a farm where he had many friends, a nice warm stable, plenty of food, and green fields in which to run and kick up his heels. His two very special friends were a white calf called Daisy and a pink pig called Squeaker. Now, I'm sure you will agree with me that Merrylegs had everything to make him happy, but I'm sorry to tell you that he was a very discontented little pony. When he was a baby, his mother told him with great pride that his great-great-grandfather had been a racehorse. At the time, Merrylegs paid very little attention to what his mother said, but as he began to grow up, he remembered it more and more often, and at last decided that he was much too well born to work. So Merrylegs became more and more discontented and grumbled when he had to deliver the milk or take the farmer to market or the farmer's wife out visiting. One fine day, the farmer harnessed Merrylegs to the little cart and got ready to go to market. In the cart he put new laid eggs, butter and cheese, and red roses out of his garden. The brown pony grumbled to himself as usual and fidgeted so much that the farmer had to call his little son to hold the reins until he was ready. At last they were off, and Merrylegs trotted down the road at a good pace. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the farmer whistled a jolly little tune. As they drew near to the market town, the pony and the farmer heard sounds of cheerful music. And as they drove into the market square, Merrylegs looked about him in astonishment. It was a fair day, and there were some swing boats, a roundabout, and a coconut shy. Merrylegs pricked up his ears. This was going to be fun, and he was very pleased indeed when the farmer stopped right in the marketplace, took the eggs and the butter and the cheese and the roses out of the cart, and disappeared down a nearby street. There were people everywhere, and Merrylegs had never seen so many children in his life. Some were flying up into the air in swing boats, shouting and laughing, and some were whizzing around on the roundabout, with music playing as they went. And quite a number of them had bought coloured balloons from a little old woman and were running around about holding them on long strings. Presently a man set up a Punch and Judy show, and Merrylegs enjoyed it tremendously. Punch made him laugh, and he was very sorry when the performance was over. It was then that he really noticed the roundabout. He saw to his great surprise that the children were riding not on chairs or seats as he had thought, but on horses. And what horses! These were lordly creatures, with proud flashing eyes and wide nostrils. Their long manes and tails floated out behind them, their forefeet pawed the air, and they had coats of scarlet, with here and there a touch of gold. Merrylegs had never even imagined that such wonderful creatures existed. He stood quite still, his neck stretched out, His eyes filled with admiration. Suddenly he struck the hard road with his hoof so that a spark flew into the air and nodded his head in a lively fashion. "Of course," he said to himself. "Of course. That's where I should be. This is the life for me. This is how the great-great-grandson of a racehorse should live. I will join those shining horses on their gilded platform. They will be only too ready to welcome me when they hear about my great-great-grandfather." At that moment the farmer came back, and he and Merrylegs set out on their homeward journey. As soon as the little pony was turned loose in the field, he galloped to the hedge, for he knew Daisy would be in the field beyond. Sure enough, she came running up as soon as she heard Merrylegs' little whinny. "Hello," she said, panting a little. "Did you have a good time? Oh, how lucky you are. I wish I could be driven to the market." "Lucky?" snorted Merrylegs. "I don't think I'm at all lucky. Listen to me, Daisy. I'm going to leave the farm tonight." "Going to leave the farm?" said Daisy, in a very surprised voice. "Whatever for?" She moved closer to the hedge so that she could see Merrylegs more clearly. Merrylegs told her all about the roundabout horses and how he had made up his mind to become one of them. The little white calf looked sad. "Oh, don't go, Merrylegs," she said. "Stay with us. Squeaker and I would miss you very much." But the brown pony was determined to go. When he met Squeaker, he told him all about his plan. "Oh, don't go, Merrylegs," grunted Squeaker. "Forget about all those silly red horses and stay here with us. Daisy and I would feel very lonely without you." But Merrylegs would take advice from no one. Though later on, when he said goodbye to Daisy and Squeaker, he felt very unhappy indeed and wished he could take them with him. Late that night, when all was quiet and the lights in the farmhouse had been put out, Merrylegs pushed his way through a gap in the hedge and stood on the road. "Goodbye to the farm," he neighed softly. Then he trotted away towards the town. It was not quite dark, for the moon was shining, but it was very quiet and still. Once he met a dog running along the road, and it startled him. But the dog was in a hurry and only called out, "Good night," as it hurried by. At last Merrylegs reached the market square, and here he found everything was silent and deserted. The lively swing boats were quiet, and not one of them moved. The coconut shy was empty, and the roundabout with its scarlet horses was deserted. Merrylegs stood in the shadow of a wall and waited for a moment. He looked around, and there was no one about. He listened, and there wasn't a sound. He picked his way as quietly as he could to the roundabout, and with a beating heart went up to one of the horses he admired so much. "Excuse me," he said, politely as he could. Do you think you could move up a little and make room for me? My great-grandfather was a racehorse, and I'd like to join you and your relations." The scarlet horse said nothing. Merrylegs looked at him and gave a little cough and waited. Still the scarlet horse was silent, so Merrylegs moved on to the next one. Excuse me," he said politely as before. Excuse me, will you be so kind as to move up and make room for me? My great-great-grandfather was a racehorse, and I would like to become one of you." But the second horse said nothing. Merrylegs could see his brilliant eyes shining in the moonlight and wondered why he didn't speak. But when he tried another horse, and after that another one, he decided they must be all asleep, and they must sleep with their eyes open. Mustn't disturb them, he thought. I'll wait until daylight, and then I'll wake up. And he moved over to stand by what looked like a little painted house on wheels. For some time the brown pony waited patiently, and he was almost asleep when the sound of a voice coming from the caravan woke him up. "Jim," it said, "Jim, what's that funny noise outside? It sounds like someone snoring." "Nothing. Go to sleep," another voice, a rather muffled one, answered. "But Jim, there's really something there. Do go and see what it is," came the voice again. Merrylegs was just going to move away when there was a grunt, and a man came out of a caravan. He was dressed only in shirt and trousers, and his hair stood on end. "My stars," he said. "Aye, Mary, you were right. It's a pony. I wonder where he came from. I'll tie him to the wheel here." And the man fastened him up securely and went back into the caravan. "Oh, what a good thing they heard me," the pony said to himself. "Can only mean they're going to make me into a roundabout horse, as the man has tied me up so securely. Just exactly what I want. I really am very lucky." And then he heard the voices again. "Yeah, if no one claims in, he'll be very useful," he heard. "He's strong enough to pull the small cart, isn't he?" Merrylegs started back, his hooves going clickety-clack on the ground. Not be a roundabout horse, be made to pull a cart? He must get away, back to the farm. If he must pull a cart, he'd rather pull the farmer's than any other in the world. He pulled at the rope that fastened him to the wheel. He pulled again and again until a rough voice told him to keep still. The little brown pony was afraid to move, and it was not long before he fell fast asleep. His eyes closed, his head dropped lower and lower, and he dreamt he was a roundabout horse. His eyes flashed, and he was painted a beautiful scarlet. His front hoofs pawed the air, and his long mane and tail floated out behind him. How excited Merrylegs was when the loud music began, and the crowds of children came running into the square. And now he was moving slowly round with a little girl on his back. Round and round he went, and faster, and on went the music. And soon Merrylegs began to feel a little queer. His head felt swimmy, and his tummy felt funny, and he began to wish he could stop. And stop he did, but only for a moment. Off he started again with a little boy on his back. The music grew louder. It made his head ache. He felt very sick, and the little boy in back thumped his head with his fist and kicked him with his heels. Was this how it felt to be a roundabout horse? How mistaken he had been. Oh, if only... And then he woke up. It was quite light, and Merrylegs could hear a lark singing. Oh, joy! He was himself, and not a roundabout horse after all. He danced with pleasure. The man came out of the caravan and began to untie the rope fastened to the wheel. "It's now or never," neighed Merrylegs as he jerked the rope out of the man's hand and galloped away down the road. Daisy and Squeaker were right after all, he thought as he went. The farm is the best place, and being a roundabout horse was horrid. I can't think how those red horses stand it. Why, I don't believe they're real horses after all. They're only made of wood. Oh, how silly I have been." And Merrylegs laughed at himself as he pushed his way through the gap in the hedge into his own field again. Daisy heard him at once. She was very glad to see him back, and hurried off to tell Squeaker the good news. The farmer was very surprised next morning when he found his pony wearing a bridle. Merrylegs was thankful to be at home again with his friends. He found that he quite enjoyed his work. In fact, he became so contented that after a time he even forgot all about his great-great-grandfather, the racehorse.